Some characters are never meant to stay silent. They linger in the shadows of cinema history, waiting for the right moment to be reimagined, reclaimed, and finally allowed to speak. Frankenstein's bride is one of those characters. And with the bride, Maggie Gyllenhaal isn't just bringing her back, she's tearing her loose. From the very first images released, it's clear that this is not a respectful, polished retelling of a familiar myth. This is a rebellion, a resurrection fueled by anger, desire, identity, and chaos. And at the center of it all is Jessie Buckley, returning from death not as someone else's creation, but as her own force. Set to premiere in IMAX on March 6, 2026, The Bride draws inspiration from Mary Shelley's original 1818 novel and the iconic 1935 film, but it refuses to live in their shadows. Maggie Gyllenhaal wears three hats here as writer, director, and producer, and you can feel that personal investment in every creative choice. This isn't homage, this is reinvention. The newly released trailer focuses on two parallel awakenings. One belongs to Frankenstein himself, played by Bale. The other belongs to the bride, played by Buckley, who wakes into a world that never asked her permission to exist. Bale's Frankie is driven by obsession and longing, determined to resurrect a woman to stand beside him. But Buckley's bride has no interest in being a companion, a symbol, or a possession. What immediately separates this version from everything that came before is language, or rather, ownership. The character refuses the title Frankenstein's bride. She is simply the bride. That distinction may sound subtle, but it's revolutionary. It strips away the idea that she exists in relation to him at all. The story unfolds in 1930s Chicago, a city simmering with crime, spectacle, and moral decay. After her resurrection, the bride finds herself thrown into a volatile world of detectives, celebrities, and a public eager to label anything different as monstrous. Frankenstein and the bride are hunted not just by authorities, but by perception itself. They become myths in real time, symbols of fear, objects of obsession. Annette Bening appears as Dr. Euphronius, a brilliant and unhinged scientist who assists in the bride's resurrection. Her presence alone adds a layer of intellectual menace to the story. Peter Sarsgaard plays a detective navigating the chaos, while Jake Gyllenhaal embodies a film star whose life intersects with these so-called monsters in ways that blur performance and reality. But this is not a love story in the traditional sense. It's stormy, destructive, and unapologetically violent. The bride doesn't emerge grateful or obedient. She emerges curious, angry, hungry for experience, and above all, determined to understand herself. Maggie Gyllenhaal has been very clear about what this film is truly about. In the original 1935 version, the bride never speaks. Her silence became her identity. In The Bride, that silence is treated as stolen power. This R-rated reimagining explores what happens when that power is reclaimed. When a woman who never had a voice suddenly has too many things to say. According to Gyllenhaal, Buckley's character is someone who could not express herself in life, but returns from death overflowing with expression. She wakes up without memories, without a past she can claim, and that absence becomes the engine of the story. Who am I when no one bothered to ask me before creating me? That question drives everything. Buckley's performance is designed to be volatile and unpredictable. Her bride is intelligent and impulsive, seductive and unsettling, tender and violent. Gyllenhaal has said that once she wrote the role, there was only one person who could play it. That conviction comes from their previous collaboration on The Lost Daughter, where Buckley proved she could carry contradiction without smoothing it out. What makes Buckley extraordinary is her willingness to sit inside emotional extremes without explaining them away. That quality is essential here. The bride isn't meant to be likable. She's meant to be understood. And even that understanding comes with discomfort. Bale's Frankenstein is equally complex. Gyllenhaal has described her version of the character as deeply emotional, vulnerable, and painfully intelligent. Inspired partly by the original novel, this Frankenstein is capable of tenderness and cruelty in the same breath. He commits monstrous acts, not because he's pure evil, but because he's human in the most dangerous sense of the word. Bale and Buckley share what Gyllenhaal calls a rare connection. Not chemistry in the romantic sense, but something deeper. A mutual willingness to hand over emotional control. That trust allows their characters to collide in ways that feel raw rather than choreographed. The casting of Peter Sarsgaard and Jake Gyllenhaal adds another layer of intimacy to the production. Sarsgaard plays a detective who exists in moral grey zones, capable of both heroism and deeply questionable actions. Gyllenhaal has spoken openly about wanting the character to be physically striking, complex, and dangerous, qualities she knew Sarsgaard could deliver. Jake Gyllenhaal, cast as a film star, represents spectacle itself. The idea of a performer navigating a story about monsters, performance, and public perception feels deliberate. This marks the first time the Gyllenhaal siblings have worked together since Donnie Darko, and that history adds texture to their collaboration. Penelope Cruz's involvement pushes the film even further into unpredictable territory. According to Gyllenhaal, Cruz brings a presence that can shift from absurd comedy to emotional realism without warning. That tonal flexibility fits perfectly into a film that refuses to stay in one genre or emotional register. Visually and thematically, The Bride draws inspiration from punk energy and Bonnie and Clyde-style outlaw romance. This isn't gothic horror polished for comfort. It's messy, loud, provocative, a monster movie that uses its myth to talk about freedom, identity, and the cost of being seen. Many plot details are still being kept under wraps, but what's already clear is that this film isn't interested in nostalgia. It's interested in transformation, in reclaiming a character who was never given agency and letting her burn through the screen with it. The Bride doesn't ask what happens when a monster is created. It asks what happens when she refuses to behave. And that might be the most dangerous resurrection of all. Stay sharp, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.